My name is... well, I suppose it doesn't really matter what my name is for what I'm about to tell you. The details would remain the same regardless. You can call me TH, my initials. Probably don't need any more than that. I'm making this because I'm starting to get nervous. Somewhat frightened, even. But more on that in a moment. You see, I'm a professor of chemistry. That piece of information is probably crucial to your understanding of my story. The college I teach at is very well renowned, and in addition to pumping out some of the brightest young scientists the world has to offer, we also have quite a diverse research lab where we do experiments, write logs and journals for scientific magazines and books, and draw conclusions about scientific anomalies or discoveries. A great many of my colleagues are just as, if not smarter than I am, even in my own field. Research-wise, we all bring something different to the table. I mean, you have a room full of people like that, and it's only a matter of time before you come up with something truly remarkable. And we did. Genetic mutations, DNA manipulation, and duplication. Just a few of the things that we would mess around with in that lab. Using existing DNA, human or animal, to create a brand new living organism. Similar to how they can grow guilt-free meat from the cells of a cow, so no cow has to be slaughtered for you to have your burger. This type of innovation could quite literally change the world. I offered some of my DNA actually for a few of the experiments. Because what were the chances of it working, you know? Many of them failed, the organisms died, or it simply didn't take. But one of them was doing well. The cells were multiplying. I suddenly had the desire to take this on by myself. If this was being made of my DNA, I wanted to be the one at the helm. The one who watched it grow. No one else. So one day I swiped the petri dish and told the other scientists that, just like the rest of them, this latest sample had been a failure. None of them were very surprised. I have a feeling that not one of them truly thought that we could achieve what we did. And now, here was a tiny organism made of my DNA. A tiny version of me, growing steadily inside this petri dish. It wasn't long before it was too big for the petri dish. It was growing in the most unusual way, like those toys that you'd put in water and they'd slowly expand and expand, starting as a blob, until details began to make themselves more clear. A couple more months went by and it started to become cumbersome to keep in my apartment. It was human-shaped and I could see the indentation of where the eyes, nose, mouth, and ears would come in, but it was still very much this wet, flesh-colored blob. I set up one of the classrooms in an abandoned building on the college campus to keep him. I stopped by every day caring for the creature, documenting everything, creating audio logs in my old tape recorder. If this went off without a hitch, I could get quite a bit of notoriety for an experiment such as this. More and more time went by, and the human-shaped blob slowly turned into a human shape, with distinct features. Muscle, a skeletal structure, and then even more details. The eyes came in, brown like mine. The hair, black like mine. The nose, sharp and defined, just like mine. A few months more, and it was quite literally as if I was looking into a mirror. It even had a mole in the same place on its face as I did. The real kicker came on the day it spoke. Try that for a piss-your-pants experience. This thing looks exactly like you, and then it speaks for the first time, and it's your voice, or my voice. It was repeating some phrases that it heard me say into my audio log. It spoke in an almost robotic manner. No flow, no rhythm, just the words. But that's when it hit me. I could train this thing. Teach it to speak, to interact, to exist. When I finally would reveal it to the world, it would be absolutely astonishing to the scientific community. The man, so smart, he created another him in order to complete his work. How was that for a headline? And so I began training him, explaining things to him. I taught him about food, sustenance, about clothing, basic things. And then I taught him conversation, gestures, pleasantries, emotions. I described all of them in vivid detail, even demonstrated them and had him demonstrate them to me, which he did almost flawlessly. I would show him how to do something and then motion to him and say, "Your turn to try." And he would. I still doubted whether or not he fully understood or felt the things that I was explaining, but it really didn't matter in the grand scheme of things. He began expressing curiosity. He wandered the halls of the abandoned building when I wasn't around. In fact, one time when I went to meet him to give him his lessons, it took me nearly 30 minutes to find him. He had wandered around so much. He was staring out a window toward the main school building. I explained to him what the building was, what I did there, how the work I did made it possible for him to be alive. He nodded in agreement and said he understood. Who knows if he really did or not. The first time I legitimately got worried was a few weeks later. I was walking to the lecture hall for my 3 p.m. class when a professor, who taught in the hall opposite mine, jokingly said to me, "Wow, did you sprint up here or what?" I looked at him, puzzled. "How'd you get up here before me? I just saw you 1 minute ago." That's when it hit me. It was wandering the halls. My experiment. I said goodbye to my colleague and pulled out my phone in a panic. I emailed the students canceling the afternoon class and then immediately went about looking for my experiment. It took some time, but I found him. He was walking the halls of the school looking at the trophy cases, reading the inscriptions on the walls and glancing at the pictures of staff. I got really lucky. No one saw us together. I brought him back to the abandoned building and explained to him how he couldn't just wander the grounds of the school without telling me. There would be no explaining why there were 2 of us, not yet. Not before all of my research and notes were compiled and I was ready to share my experiment with the world. He seemed to understand. However, I knew the desire to explore was growing in him. So I got him a basic phone. I programmed my number into it and told him that I was the only one he was to call, and to call me if he needed anything or felt the desire to wander around or explore. I instructed him to not leave or do anything without giving me a heads up first, and he agreed. For a while, this arrangement worked. He would call or text me when he needed something or wanted to explore, and then I'd go there as soon as I could to accommodate. But it wasn't too long before I started to notice that he was breaking our arrangement, leaving the abandoned building without telling me, wandering the grounds of the school, and maybe even further, who knows. I even caught him outside my lecture hall listening in on one of my classes. Luckily, he had enough sense, if you could even call it that, to wear this hoodie I gave him so he couldn't be easily recognized. I went to the abandoned building to confront him that evening, and when I did, I saw something even more odd. He had some of the empty desks and chairs aligned as if a class was in session, and he was standing at the front, pretending to give a lecture, using phrases that I would use, inflection I would use, even gestures that I used. It was a bit unsettling, if I'm being honest. And I don't know why I acted the way I did that evening, but I got mad. I yelled at him for breaking our arrangement. I yelled at him for doing this creepy mock lecture. I told him he would never be me, never be anything like me outside of his appearance, and that he would always be my experiment. The whole time I screamed at him, his facial expressions didn't change. He just looked at me in the eye, his mouth at neither a frown nor a smile, his head tilted to one side as if he was trying to figure something out. Or figure me out. Chances are he didn't even understand a word I said, so I left in a rage and drove home. For the most part, I had calmed down by the next day, which was Saturday, so I decided to drive back to campus and talk to him in a little bit more of a civilized way. A way befitting of the scientist that I was. Only, when I arrived, he was nowhere to be found. I searched the whole building. Nowhere. His phone and the clothes I had bought for him were gone as well. I searched the main building and the school grounds. Still nothing. I got back to my car. Where the hell could he be? Almost as if he could hear my thoughts, my phone went off, alerting me of a text message. It was from him. All it said was 3rd Street Pub, 7:30 p.m. I felt both relief and fear. At least I knew he was still out there and I had a way of finding him, but at the same time, this autonomy. I wasn't comfortable with my experiment exercising this level of freedom from me. Who knows what trouble he could cause out there? I needed to rein him in quick. I agreed to the meeting and then went back down to our science lab and grabbed some chemicals I could use to pacify him to bring him back to the school if required. The place was a mess for some reason, but I found what I needed. I met him at the pub that evening. We sat in the back. He wore a cap pulled low and a mask over his face. One good thing to come out of the pandemic, I suppose. Wear a mask and nobody even bats an eye. "Where the hell have you been?" I tried to say, as calmly as possible. "You can't wander off like that. We talked about this." He looked at me, expressionless. "My turn." "Your turn? What is that supposed to mean?" "Your life." "My turn." I was starting to get upset. "No, not your turn. You need to listen to me. You need to do what I tell you, otherwise it'll end bad for the both of us." This wasn't working. It was time to get some of the chemicals I brought. If I could slip it in his coffee. "I know it's in your pocket. If you use it, it will end bad. For you." I looked at him, puzzled. How the hell could he have known? "I know how you think. I know how you act. I am you. And now, it's my turn." I started to feel woozy and lightheaded. I looked at my coffee. God damn it. He leaned over the table and grabbed my wallet and card to pay for the bill. And then he said, "Let's go for a walk." I was in no state to disagree. He walked me from the pub down the street. As we walked, he pulled my phone and my keys from my pockets as well. He unlocked my phone with his thumbprint. My thumbprint. He grabbed my school ID from my chest pocket and tucked it in his own. As we walk into a dark alley away from the lights of the street, away from any passerby. I hope for one final burst of energy, one chance to fight back against myself. Because my experiment is going to kill me. I can feel it. I know how he thinks. He's going to kill me. And then it will be his turn. Because he's wearing my face. The sound of his ribs cracking beneath my hands, and the boy's screams turned to gargles as he was unable to gasp for another breath. He's not going under, the anesthesiologist yelled as he gave the kid a second dose of propofol. Of course, without a functioning heart, there'd be no way for the drug to flow through his veins, even as I tried my best to pump it for him. After an hour of compressions, the chief of surgery had intervened and ordered us to stop. At that point, we caused more damage than we helped. What's happening to me? The kid stuttered, still conscious. None of us responded. We couldn't find any words to describe the horrific sight before us. Most of the staff had left due to the sight. We'd faced many challenges in our career, but nothing quite like this. "What's your name?" I asked, despite already having seen it in the file. I just wanted him to focus. "Brian Dawson," he responded. I took a deep breath, doing my best to keep my composure. "You were in an accident, Brian.